Alright, so before I even start talking, it's currently like 12:30, and I should really be in bed, but I'm not, because I'm filming this video. Because I know I won't want to do it tomorrow. But anyway, basically what this video is going to be is I'm going to explain each part that makes up a computer. So, you know, I'm going to call this segment Tech for Dummies, and hopefully I'll be doing a couple of these, if this is something that works out well. So, what I'm going to start off with is called a processor, or more commonly referred to as the CPU. It looks like this on this side, and that on that side. So, this is an old one, so they can look different. They can also be bigger, but basically what this does for the computer is this is like the brain. And then inside the brain, there's, you know, different portions of the brain, and they're called cores. So in this CPU, there's only 2 cores, but in my CPU over there in my gaming system, there is 8 cores. And there's also something called hyper-threading that gives you additional cores, but they're not actually full physical cores, but I'll go over that in another thing. I'm going to move on to this stick. Is called RAM. It's also referred to as memory. These can run at all kinds of different speeds, and so can processors. And basically what this does, this helps the computer remember things, you know, just like the memory that you have in your brain. So you can kind of think of that as like what RAM does. It kind of holds programs in it so that the system can quickly pull it back up rather than have to reopen it. This right here, it looks like this on the bottom. This is called a heatsink and fan. This part down here can be made of a couple different things. This cools down the processor. So it's the cooling system for the brain of the computer. You could also see it on the processor over there. That's called thermal paste. So that helps also cool down the processor. It transfers the heat from the processor onto the heatsink, and then the heatsink is cooled down with a fan, but I'll go more into a heatsink later because there's also another way to cool it down. We'll just do storage drive real quick. This is a hard drive. You can see this form factor is called 3.5 inch. That's the size that it is. But there's also something called solid state drive or disk. SSD is more what it's commonly referred to, which is why I don't even know what it stands for. And they usually come in 2.5 inch, so they're smaller drives, and they're much faster, but these are usually cheaper and have a lot more storage on them. So, that's why gamers will usually have a hard drive to store all their games on, and the operating system, which is kind of what the brain runs, that's the program that it runs. So you can see, so an operating system is like Windows, like you can see behind me. That's the program that it runs. Going to graphics card. A graphics card is the part of your eyes that renders or processes what you see kind of thing and your eyes. So, like I said, I would talk about a heatsink later. This is also a heatsink, but this is cooling down a graphics card. This is passively cooled, which means it doesn't need a fan hooked right to it. It just, with passive air that's going by, it just uses that to cool the heatsink down, which is pretty cool. But on more powerful graphics cards, which is what you'll more commonly see, you'll have a fan attached, or even 2 or 3 fans, depending on how powerful the card is. There will also be a back plate if you have a more high-end graphics card, but all graphics cards kind of do the same thing. Graphics cards also have memory in them, and that works differently. That like holds what you're seeing, and it remembers that for the next time that you look back there in a game or an application. So there's that. There's also, you can see the heatsink in there. That's getting cooled down by the fan. There's many different types of coolers for graphics cards, but I'll go into that in a different video as well, because that gets much more complicated and in-depth. Now the last, well, not the last part, because I'm going to explain something later. This is a power supply. All power supplies will kind of look like this. There's usually a fan on the top or bottom, whichever side you want to call that, but this power supply has a fan here. This is a really, this is a really bad power supply. It's not very good. This will usually come in just lower end systems, and I just happen to have this one. I have a much higher end power supply in my gaming system, and this just powers the whole system. So, this is like your energy in your body. You can think of it that way. And then what we have here is called a motherboard. So this is basically, this just brings everything together and helps it run together. This is kind of the overlay of the system. So you can see a processor goes in this socket looking thing here. A graphics card will go in a slot that looks like this. There's SATA connectors, which will transfer the data between a hard drive or SSD onto here. And then there's even higher end storage devices that I'll also go into a different video. And then this is where RAM or memory goes, so you can put that there. And then you can see all these little things around the motherboard. That's where you plug in the power so that it can power the board. This little thing on the back is called a back plate, and what that does is that helps tie down the cooler. You can see it come through here, and that's where the screw for the cooler of the processor will go. Whoa. Well, I'm gonna get made fun for that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for this. If you have any questions or you want me to clarify something specifically, please let me know. I will gladly do other videos. Like I said, I need to do a video on more further into graphics cards. I'll probably do one more further into processors, and probably more further into storage devices, because those range and vary a lot. Unlike, something like power supplies, that's just kind of the amount of power that they have, and, cables. It doesn't really matter as much as what processor you're choosing, or what graphics card you're choosing. So, I'll go into them more in depth eventually. So, hopefully this helped you further understand how a computer works and how it functions all together, as I was using an analogy of, like, a human body. So, hopefully that helped. And this has been Walrus from the Lazarus technology, and I'll catch you guys later.